Hey, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Brooke, and today we're going to be doing a longer video, or like a multi-step video, I would say, on orchid care, because I don't really know anything about orchids. However, I have 3 orchids here, 2 of which are the same types, and then 1 is different. This is not one of them, but I have kept them alive successfully over the course of probably, well, since February. It's July right now that I'm starting this. So since February, I've had 2 orchids. And actually, since December or November of last year, since November of last year, I've actually had a Jewel Orchid. So different genuses, but they're called the same. Either way, we're going to be talking about them and what I'm doing. I am going to actually chop back the 2 regular, I don't know what specific type of orchid they are, and then my Jewel Orchid. We're going to chop them back, get the cat off the table, and go from there. If you're new to this channel and you like talking about houseplants and doing different DIYs and everyday things, make sure to subscribe to this channel. That way you can be up to date on all of my latest videos. And if you are a recurring viewer, thank you so much for coming back and watching another video. So again, I got these 2 orchids. So they're just regular old orchids at our local Kroger in February. So it was, or was it after Mother's Day? It's got to be, it probably was May. It was May, okay? And so I picked them up because this one was $3.50 on clearance, and this one was $10. Now this one, I waited for both, had blooms, and I waited for both to fall off, but this one had multiple like shoots. And I really, truly don't know anything about orchids. So if you are like an avid orchid person, please comment below and give us all some tips. I've posted this before on my Instagram to leave your best tips in the comments. And pretty much the majority of people said that they were not great at taking care of orchids. But anyways, I picked this one up because it was so cute and so small. It actually has a new leaf right here that has grown since I've got it. And it just has 3 different offshoots for blooms. Now, again, this one was fully bloomed and it was very beautiful. It has the smallest little blooms. And if I find a picture, I'll put it here because I know I took one of it. They were white, and it has a really good root system. So you can see here, I know how to pick out an orchid. You really do want like the good green, root system here. This one over here is super green and fresh. So it has stayed relatively healthy since I have had it in my care. There is one yellowing leaf down here, and there is a dying shoot like right here. Yeah, right here. But otherwise they are pretty okay. Like it's doing well. I do honestly need to probably pull this out and repot it into something a little larger. I know typically people keep them in these like pods for a good long while, but they are like any other plant. They do like to be potted up and have room to grow. So this is definitely probably outgrown its moss, because you can see there are more roots than moss now. But I do see a few rotted roots, but nothing too major. And so I really never knew what to do for these guys. So this sits in my bedroom in a southwest facing window, and it seems to be liking that. Again, it has a new leaf right here that grew out, and it has stayed relatively healthy. I water it once the moss is completely dry, and then I just drown it. I stick it in a tub of water and let it soak for like 10 minutes, and then take it out and place it back in its pot. Now, I do know also with orchids, you don't want to get the crown, which is the center spot here in the leaves, wet. So it does cause rotting if you are watering it from the top and getting water in there. It just sits and pools in there, and it will rot your plant out. I know that much as well. Now, the part that throws me is that once, the blooms die off and it looks dead, people throw them away. But it's not dead. It is alive still, and they will rebloom. But in order to rebloom, you have to cut them back. And so I had an orchid. I purchased it like a year or more ago now, and it died, and I cut it off, or like I cut it all the way back. and it never rebloomed. So it actually ended up dying completely. And I didn't understand what I did wrong because I cut it all the way back and did like the same like care for it that I was doing while it was blooming, but it definitely just died. And so it can be a little frustrating. But I saw for Plants with Crystal, she had orchids, and she shared that you have to find the last unopened like bloom, like don't cut it all the way back here. Find the last unopened like bloom. Do you see how this right here has a little, you can see a point off, and same for this here. All of this was blooming and had bloomed, but down here it is closed. And so I hope I cut it back to that. So I don't cut below it, I cut back right above it. That's my assumption watching her video, I believe. And I could be totally wrong because it has been a while since I watched that video. However, we're going to try it today on this orchid and this big orchid. So this orchid is much larger, obviously, and it had purple or blue blooms. I cannot remember. Maybe they were red. I'll post a photo of it if I have one. But I'm going to do the same thing. So you can see really well on this one how it has all budded off here. That's where all the blooms were. But down here, it is closed. Do you see how it's still, this little piece right here is still closed to the stem? And so this one has bloomed off. And honestly, that might be a new growth point. Hold on. That might be a new growth point. Actually, there's a new growth point in this bud right here. And so maybe it will just grow from that one. Maybe if I cut this back, it will grow off. So what happened here, it started growing off. So I purchased it this way. It already, had this offshoot. And it was, I assume, bloomed at some point because again, like there is no flower there. It's just an offshoot. And I think that's what's going to happen when you chop here is what's happened. The newest or the oldest, like unactive part of the plant, just like any other plant, starts to grow. And so I believe if I cut this back to here, it will force this growth point right here to start to grow. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to chop them all back. This guy actually sits in, where do you sit? Oh, you sit in my kitchen on my hanging shelf on the side of my fridge, and it gets light from a Sansi little clip-on light. So it does not get high light. It gets pretty indirect, I would say, because it sits a couple of shelves below that light and gets ambient light, but it seems to be doing pretty well. I will tell you, these roots don't look as healthy as my other one. They definitely have a lot of rotted roots, but a majority of them are still very green. So it's not doing bad. I just probably overwater it. I tend to care for this one more because it is in my site more than my other smaller one. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to cut it and see if it will grow back. Now, I think that these will bloom at any point in the season is my understanding. I have seen House Plus Plants. She has a ton of orchids. She does them in water. She puts them in water, and hers I feel like bloom fairly often and every couple months, to be fairly honest, it feels like, unless she's buying, new ones. I don't know, but I feel like hers are always blooming. So I'm going to chop these guys back, and we're just going to start the process to see how it does and if they do bloom. Now it is about to be winter here, and so that's probably a hindrance, but it's okay. They will bloom next year, theoretically. So I'm taking these stakes out because I will no longer need them. These are just to keep the blooms straight. So again, this one is unopened. You can see here it's not open. This one is open and it has an offshoot. So I'm just going to cut right here. And I do not think that you can propagate these. I don't think you can propagate this. Again, I know nothing about orchids, so I don't know how you actually propagate these and like multiply them per se. But then this guy here, this looks like it's budding because again, it has a shoot coming out of it. And so I'm just going to cut right above it because this is dead. This will not produce anymore because all of the shoots are open And so I will leave it like this, and hopefully, again, it will promote growth from here, and then this will continue to grow right here. So we'll put him up to the side, and I will watch my watering. Then this guy here, I am going to chop this guy right here, just right above where its blooms have died off. And then over here, I don't really know where. I guess down here, I can see a growth spot there. Honestly, I could cut it here and it would grow back there. And I could cut it here, but then it wouldn't grow back here. Does that make sense? So I'm going to chop it here. We're going to do something crazy. I'm going to chop it there, and I'm going to chop it right here, because those had blooms. This was like a 3. You see that? A 3 shoot. And then this guy, I'm just going to chop it here, because nothing's going to grow back from that one. But I don't think anything will grow back from that one either. But if I didn't, I would have to cut it back all the way here and then cut off those 3 shoots. So we're just going to cut it there. And then this guy is dying, but I'm going to cut it again back like that, because the pieces that I just cut off, they had already bloomed. And again, you can see it, like all those are open, which means that they had a bloom on them. Same for this. All these are open, so they had blooms on them. We're going to leave that guy like that and see what happens. Now, my other orchid, which is this Jewel Orchid here, I actually got this from the Tipsy Gardener, and it was in November of last year, and it bloomed for me. Like in December, it bloomed for me, and I thought it was crazy because I've never had a plant bloom before, and so I just thought that it was a normal leaf, but turns out, no, it was a bloom. So I'll put photos of it here because I know I have quite a few photos of it, and it was just very pretty. It lasted for quite some time, actually. I would say probably a couple weeks, but I can't cut this string. I had to keep it all together. It grew really long and leggy, and so I had it strung up together to keep it straight, but now all the bottom leaves have fallen off, and it's grown into this, again, really leggy plant. So I keep this sitting very far back from a southwest facing window in my kitchen, on my kitchen sink, and it gets very little to no light, if I'm being completely honest. And I had it in a highlight situation, and I just felt like it was depleting very quickly. And again, I had never known anything about these plants. It wasn't a plant that I purchased. Again, she gave it to me, and so I know that they're very popular. However, I didn't know anything about them, and so it was a little bit of a learning curve. So I have found out that it did not like the highlight situation that I put it in, and it doesn't like being moved. So I have just kept it in the same spot, and that's when it started blooming. So I think that the most comment I got back from these guys was, once you find a spot for them, leave them there. Kind of like the fiddle leaf fig. They do not, again, like to be moved, and they will get angry when you do. So this guy has just been growing. You can see the dead bloom right here. Now, I don't know if it's like a Maranta, where a Maranta, if you cut that bloom, like old spot off, I found that they never bloom there again, which I'm not really sure what I was supposed to do, like if I just left it there. But I just noticed that on a Maranta, that stem never bloomed after that. And I've just kept it here. So again, this stopped blooming in January, but I have still kept it hanging on. But I decided that I was going to propagate this because look how many leaves it's missing. And it definitely is bending towards the light, as you can see, because my window is like, it's here, and my window is like all the way there. But I'm going to chop it because I did find out that you can propagate these just like you can a pothos or a philodendron, and that is by cutting below the node. So this is an inactive node right here, and just cutting below that and placing it in water, I guess, which I find it to be really interesting because these have very thick stems and they're very juicy. Don't know if that makes sense, but I do feel like putting them in water is just going to make them rot. They do remind me of asparagus, honestly. That same like thick stem. So I don't know if I'm going to put them in water or if I'll put them in like perlite and see how they do, or maybe one in water and one in perlite, maybe. But I don't have sphagnum moss, so I know I can't do that. But I'm just going to chop these guys up and see what happens. So I'm going to chop this one all the way back, as you can see. So this is the last node all the way down at the bottom, like that. Cut the stem. So I just cut it like that, and so this will propagate since it's, you know, oh yeah, see, I didn't realize that. It has a new shoot growing. So I think that once they bloom, they stop growing, and then they produce another one? I don't know, maybe. But it definitely has a second shoot. So this will go in water, doing the same for this guy, cutting them all the way back. So then this can go, that one, and all the way back, that one. So now I am left with 4 studs. And I will probably put this in my greenhouse cabinet, to be fairly honest, because it's going to be shocked. And I definitely don't want to put this so far back from a window where it has no light to grow new growth, especially since it doesn't have any leaves. So I will put this in my greenhouse shelving unit under a Barina grow light and see how it does. I will watch my watering for sure. That's the other thing with these guys, is they don't love to dry out. You will notice that if they dry all the way out, they kind of shock, like coming back too. So they don't like to be overwatered. You do just have to watch your watering. Don't let them dry. You know, I would say an inch of wet at the bottom and water it. But otherwise, it's been fairly easy to care for. And again, I was really surprised that it bloomed for me. So I will stick 2 in perlite and 2 in water and see how they do. And then we will come back to this and I will give updates in a few weeks maybe and see how they do.